Welcome, everybody. Long-awaited, anticipated game week, and we get right after it with a great opponent in USC. Excited about the matchup. Certainly, Sunday, Las Vegas, and a game that will be seen on ABC in prime time. So, just a great showcase for college football, LSU in particular. And certainly for all that follow college football should be a great matchup. We're excited about the football team that we have going into the season. Every year is a new team, and certainly we lost some great playmakers last year. But again, every team across the country has lost great playmakers, and probably some of the similarities are, USC and LSU lost Heisman Trophy winners at quarterback. And so now it's time to talk about the guys that we do have. And, we're excited about, some of the leadership that we have. As many of you know, recent news, Josh Williams and Greg Penn were awarded the number 18. They exemplify the kind of other-centeredness, thinking about team first. That's emblematic of 18, being a great teammate, overcoming adversity. And number 7 will be worn by Will Campbell. Of course, he's an offensive lineman. He can't actually wear 7, but he'll have a patch that will show that. And then Harold Perkins on defense. And again, what does 7 represent to us? A great history and tradition with both of these numbers, 18 and 7. And 7, much more about a player that has roots in the state of Louisiana and certainly can bring up the play of all those around him. Certainly individually is a great player, but is more than that. Somebody that again, from my perspective, can electrify all those around him, and both of these guys certainly do that. So I wanted to make sure that we gave proper notice to those guys. From an injury standpoint, we have one guy that is questionable, and that's Chris Hilton. He has a bone bruise. He is working through that process, but today he'll be listed in that category. Probable is would be Frazier, our offensive guard. Those are the two right now that would show up on our injury report relative to this week. Looking again at some of the things that we need to do against a great team like this, certainly it's been a prolific offense. Lincoln Riley is an outstanding football coach. His pedigree in terms of winning at Oklahoma and again at USC has been through the offense. And we've got to do a great job, obviously, in making them one-dimensional. They are, if they are balanced offensively, they are very difficult to defend. We've got to limit some of the big plays. Certainly, Zachariah Branch is an electrifying offensive player. We've got to be able to tackle him, not only offensively, but in special teams. And then obviously prepare for a defense that we're not really certain about because they have so many new players on defense. We know the structure. We know that, from a defensive standpoint, they bring in a lot of talented players. Bear Alexander, Ramsey, a lot of these guys are coming in as heralded transfers that certainly will impact our defense. Coach Lynn coming over from UCLA did a great job, and he will impact that defense as well. So, we've got our hands full, but, again, from our perspective, we'll be who we are from an offensive standpoint. Try to be as balanced as we can on offense. Defensively, we've got to be able to, as I mentioned, tackle in space, do a great job of stopping the run and prevent some of the big plays. A lot of kind of the same things that you hear week in and week in, week in and week out when coaches talk about what they need to do to win football games. So that's a little bit about LSU and USC and Sunday. I'll open it up to questions.
Hey, Brian, right up the middle. Just what are some of the hallmarks of a Lincoln Riley offense? And you touched on it a little bit, but how do they stress you? And then later, we're going to go see your recovery center. Why was that so important to you to have implemented?
Yeah, so, first of all, from an offensive standpoint, Lincoln runs an air raid offense, so it is predicated on, attacking, playing fast. It's an offense that certainly has been prolific in the time that he has run it. I think they were, top 5 in the country in terms of passing offense, and certainly, with Caleb Williams running that offense, it was elite. But again, that's what you're looking at, an air raid offense that has its basic premise in obviously pushing the tempo. Look, if they can spread you out and they can get numbers, they're going to run the football as well. So this is not just throw it all over the place. This is about, if they can get fair numbers and run the football, they'd like to do that too. But it's predicated on an air raid, offense. The Recovery Center is part of putting together in the Football Operations Center a high-performance center that starts when you walk in with our Performance Nutrition Center. And then on the back end of it is the recovery end. And you can't be high performance without all of those things. You have to have nutrition. You have to have strength and conditioning. You have to have the ability to teach. You have to have the ability to spend time with your players. And then certainly the recovery piece, the rehab piece, the diagnostic piece is all there. Everything is now in that operations center that allows you to have an elite program. And this is kind of that finishing piece that I wanted to present to our media, so you saw what a high-performance center looks like.
Hey, Brian, is there – sorry, I thought I heard somebody else. Is there anybody on the team who would be unavailable for this game for a non-injury reason?
No, there's nobody that has been practicing with us that would not be would be excluded for something other than an injury.
And then you talked about in the preseason about sort of maybe using 2 punters, kind of having to come up with a plan there. What is going to be the approach, especially when USC has a returner like Zachariah Branch?
Yeah, so I think from a tactical standpoint, limiting his ability to field the football, right? I mean, we certainly want to stress their returns by not kicking it straight down the middle of the field. So, what is that, right? I mean, I think we've got 2 talented kickers. I think they both have the ability to impact the game. I think from our standpoint, I think we have some things that we can do that will allow both of them to impact the game. And it has a lot to do with, trying to keep the ball from, being kicked straight down the middle of the field and giving him an opportunity with space to return kicks.
Hey, Coach, right here. Just kind of building off the question earlier about the offense, just a big part of that will be Miller Moss and kind of his first year as a starter. I mean, how do you go about approaching that as you guys are in that same position having a first-year starter, but just a first-year starter now that's going to get these opportunities. How do you go about planning for a guy like that?
Yeah, I think, he was the MVP of their bowl game, and rightfully so. I thought he played extremely well. And so you're really taking a lot of, what they did in the bowl game because, you've got a couple of weeks to prepare, right? And they had some time to really kind of settle in on what they felt his comfort level is. Now he's grown from there. He's had a spring practice and he's had, another 2.5 weeks. So, there's going to be more to the offense. But, you're going to take what, Coach Riley has been successful with, and then you're going to look at their offensive structure and certainly, begin to build your plan accordingly. he does some things a little bit different than Caleb. He's not as a freelance player, but so does Nussmeier. He's not Jaden Daniels. So I think they defend us in a similar fashion, where they look at Nussmeier and what he did in the bowl game, and they kind of attack us the same way. So I think we're both in kind of a similar space relative to how we build our defensive game plans.
Hey, Coach Keller up here. A lot of unknowns on an opener. We saw that with the game in Ireland this past week, and anything can happen. The comfort level having Garrett at quarterback, does it make life a little easier when you walk into Las Vegas, having a guy that he's been in this situation before? This isn't a guy that can get gun shy and get nervous in these kind of big-time games.
Yes, I would say that, having a quarterback that has been in the system for the last couple of years, that knows what it looks like, what it's like to be in, an SEC battle, is certainly, and has played in a game against a pretty darn good defense. I think that, those things make you feel a little bit more at ease going into these games. But openers are difficult, right? You practice so much, right? Look, spring practice, preseason practice. There's so much practice, and then you got to flip it to performance, where it's your first performance, and you have to execute at a high level in your opener. So I think every coach has that uneasiness in the opener because they don't know exactly what you're going to get when you flip that script. You hope that it's flawless execution. We're expecting much better execution with this group because of the maturity of the lot. And with Garrett, he's been in games, he's started games, he's played 4 quarters. So again, there's a better sense, but we got to play a little bit more football.
Coach, one of the last times we talked to you, you said the defense was eliminating the egregious bust and they were forcing more turnovers. How do you feel about your defense going into the season opener, and how much has this new staff improved your players since the spring?
Look, this is all about, how do they look against, scripted plays and, limited opportunities. And certainly, I know that our football team and the guys that we have feel really good about where they're at. But you got to go test yourself, against somebody else to really be able to answer those questions. And then we'll be back here in a week, and we'll be able to answer a lot of questions about where we're at. I know going in that we're prepared defensively. Our guys are excited about playing for Blake. I know that they get the scheme very well. There's not a lot of confusion. There's not a lot of busts. There's guys that clearly understand what it is to play LSU football. And I'm excited to watch them play. And so I think that's half of it, right? Everybody has a high expectation. I expect them to play the level of football on defense that we've been accustomed to. And they'll get that opportunity on Sunday.
Yeah, Brian, and as a follow-up to that, specifically your defensive line, I guess from your eyes, what would really constitute a very solid performance from them? Their first time out, a lot of guys first time, and they're playing together.
Yeah, do your job. I mean, look, this isn't that hard. If we have our guys up front they're physically strong enough to do their job, and I think Bo Davis has done a really good job of just focusing in on the technical pieces that they need to accomplish. And, if you're a shade, play your shade. If you're a 3, play your 3. Let's do our job up front. I think we're talented at linebacker. I think we're talented off the edges. I think we're talented that we can get to our spots. We just need to do our jobs up front. And if we do that, and we're 1/11th of our defense with our tackles in particular, we're going to be fine. And it's just, trying to do things that are not in the scope of what your job description is.
There's been a lot of focus, obviously, you lose the Heisman Trophy winner and a couple other first-round draft picks, and this focus on what you've lost. But your team returns a lot, not just from last year, but guys who played all the way back in the SEC championship game in 2022. How has that experience manifested itself this year, and how much does that count for in college football, that
maybe we focus on the talent and stuff, and there's not enough focus on the experience and the chemistry.
Well, look, I mean, as a coach, you always know that front row is going to leave every year, and so you're always looking at, what's the complexion of this team going to be, because winning and losing is such a fine, fine line, and a lot of times it can be just what the mindset of your team is, and what's the level of accountability and leadership? And I think we have that. I think we have, if we don't have, the kind of playmakers maybe that we had last year, we have great leadership. We have guys that have experience. We have guys that hold each other accountable. And they're going to play this game right to the very end. And I think we've all seen enough college football games that if you just keep playing and you keep doing your job, you can find a way to win games. And I think that's what this group's about. They've got some experience. They know what it's like to play and win games. They've won 10 games the last 2 years in a row and played in an SEC championship. So this is a team that, knows what to do and how to do it. They haven't done it every single week, but they've been pretty darn close. We've had a couple of games where, we didn't bring our best, but by and large, this group understands what it takes to be successful, and I expect them to continue to do that because we have some experience now and we have some really good leadership.
Here in the middle. To piggyback off of experience and openers, how much can you take away from those 2 games against Florida State the last 2 years that you could potentially apply going into this game against USC?
I mean, some of the key guys in those games are no longer here. In those games, you're getting a quarterback, ready in the first year. Wide receivers were inexperienced, so you got 2 freshman tackles. I mean, it's a journey, right? I mean, I think we're 3 years into it, and those guys who played as freshmen are now going to be playing in this opener with all that experience. So as Scott said, I mean, in one instance, those games that they played against Florida State, they're going to help them in this opener. And so, there's a lot of guys that have some of those battle scars, from previous openers and understand what it takes to win an opener on both sides of the ball. Whether it's Harold Perkins or whether it's Will Campbell. And they both happen to wear number 7, and they both were here for that. So, like I said, I think, you take away experiences. Those guys are leaders for this team. They've been there, done that. That doesn't mean everybody has, but they certainly impart and impact what we do on a day-to-day basis, and they're going to impact Sunday in terms of how we play.
Hey, Coach, with Hilton and Miles Frazier, if they aren't able to play, who would be some guys to keep an eye on this week, I guess on the O-line and then at wide receiver?
Yeah, we've been moving that around. Tyree Adams has played a little bit of guard. Paul Mobanga is playing a little bit of guard for us. So, those 2 guys would be naturally moving in to that position. I think that's kind of how we've been managing it right now. Again, Miles should practice here tomorrow for us. So that's why we've got him listed as probable. Chris will move around today with our trainers. We'll get a better sense of his situation. That's why we've got him as questionable, because we haven't seen him move around. We've seen Miles move around. Kyle Parker will be the next guy up in that situation. He's had a great camp. We feel really good about what he can do for us. And then we can start moving the pieces around a little bit. Xavion Thomas gets a little bit more involved in what we're doing relative to, playing out at the field. So, we can move some guys around, but those would be the 2 guys that would be featured a little bit more Aaron Anderson gets called on a little bit more, and then you can bump, Kyron out to the X as well. So we've got a lot of moving pieces where some guys know multiple positions. But going back to my original comments, Kyle Parker would be the first guy that slides in.
Hey, Coach. Could you just briefly revisit the implications of committing to a season opener of this nature in a year when the conferences that both teams are in are getting bigger and stronger, and what considerations went into maintaining it on the schedule on both sides, and whether you might still be inclined to do it again?
Sure. Well, let me start with the beginning of the question, and none of the conference realignment had not occurred when this agreement had unfolded. And then we were so far down the line in terms of getting this done, in terms of, Las Vegas being involved and the financial considerations being involved. And let me underline, this is not about finances. We're not playing this game just because of money. We're playing because you've got two teams that, shared a national championship. You've got two elite programs coming together. And that's the reason why we wanted the matchup. And it was before, the conference had obviously changed, them going into the Big Ten. And certainly we felt like this was a great matchup. Moving forward, these may not be the kind of things that you see relative to openers. Again, I think we were too far down the line to want to make any changes with this opener. I think it's still an appealing opener, even given the changes that have occurred. So I think that would be my answer, is that we were just too far down the road to make any changes, and that moving forward, we may or may not see something like this.
Hey, Coach, right here in the middle. There's a lot of similarities between you guys and USC, and one of them being you guys will both have new defense coordinators. USC hired D'Anton Lynn from UCLA, and last season they were one of the best defenses in the country, first in rush defense and fourth in sacks nationally. What makes this defense so effective from watching the film?
They had some really good players. Their defensive end, was a first-round draft pick. They had some. I think, again, very active, play a lot of man coverage, very similar scheme in terms of, getting after people. And so I just think a very aggressive, defensively, there's different ways, right, to attack people. And I think Coach Lynn did a great job of looking at matchups, utilizing his personnel in a great way at UCLA, and he's probably going to do the same thing here with the new personnel that he has. And so, we've evaluated what he's done at UCLA. He's got a new staff as well. Who knows what kind of influences the new staff? He's got some outstanding staff members that they've assembled: defensive line, linebackers, secondary. So we just have to be prepared, to handle, 3 down, 4 down pressures, all of those things, and be who we are. But know that we have a great deal of respect for what he's done.
Coach, right here, players on both sides of the ball during fall camp talked about stacking good days, and the coordinators did as well. How does that translate into a game week, and how you want to see that happen? And then, obviously, what's your hope for how that comes to fruition on Sunday night and each game day?
Yeah, I think any good program, any great program that aspires to be great, has to have a model of consistency. I mean, it's, I don't know that any of us have a job where our boss tells us, hey, it's okay to be really good at what you do on Tuesday and Thursday, but don't worry about Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's just, I think we all kind of live in the same world of, this has to be something that is the constant application of what you do. And it's, it's hard. It's hard to do that, with 18 to 21-year-olds. And getting that constant application is what you're asking for with 72 plays, right? you can't take a play off. You can't have, a mistake where you're supposed to be playing this coverage and you're playing another. And that just requires a focus, a consistency, great habits. And so that's why when we say stacking days together, we're hoping to build elite habits with our football players. And, we try to do it in other areas of their life so that when it comes to football, it feels easy.
Brian, playing USC is obviously new for LSU. It's not new for you. You did it for a long time at Notre Dame. A couple of prongs to the question. Is there any similarities with this SC team to the ones you faced? Does preparing for them for as long as you did help you at all here? And then maybe just a thought on what it's like to go into a game against SC when you're playing that name and that brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of history and tradition, I mean, playing in the Coliseum, I think, really kind of brings it more to light, right? You get the white horse running and, the Trojan band is playing and it's the Coliseum. And, that pageantry is really, it's part of the fabric of college football, much like, Death Valley. Or any of the other great venues. The 2000 and 19, 20, 21 version of USC was built on the air raid as well. So, there's some similarities. From that perspective. Lincoln Riley is a great play caller. So, I'm not here to argue who's a better play caller, but there were similarities in terms of what they were trying to do offensively. So that's why the transition in terms of, what they went to offensively was pretty seamless. So, pretty similar there, but, you're going to get outstanding skill players on the field. You're going to get players that on both sides of the ball, to your naked eye, you're going to go, that looks like an SEC player. And that looks like a guy that would be playing in the SEC, and that's what we'll get on Sunday.
Hey, Coach. So in terms of defense, and more specifically Jacobian Guillory, what kind of year are you anticipating for him to have? And then, what are you looking forward to most in him?
Well, he's been our best defensive tackle, our most consistent, starting with the tail end of last year, and that continued through the spring and into preseason camp. He's extremely strong, physically strong, can hold the point, plays with great leverage and technique. He's really come along incredibly well in terms of the ability to use his hands and disengage and find the football. There's one thing to have strength, at the point of the attack, but if you can't find the football, okay, you just hold the point. What he's been able to do is use great strength, and now he's controlling the blocker and finding the football. What do I think we'll see? He's going to make a lot of tackles. And defensive tackles, if you look at their sheets at the end of the day in terms of assisted tackles, even unassisted tackles, sometimes they show up with maybe 2, 3. That's a big day. He's going to be a guy that's going to be involved in the tackle sheet, and that's saying a lot for a defensive tackle.